What should our spending priorities be? Medium-term spending plans have been developed in the context of a very weak economy, limited budgetary resources, and rising pressures on the fiscus. Please note that, thus far, over the 3-year expenditure period ahead, consolidated expenditure will grow by an annual average of 7.3%, from 1.6 trillion in 2017 and 2018 to 1.9 trillion in 2020 and 21. The fastest growing functions are community development and learning and culture and health, so social spending. The fastest growing category of expenditure is debt servicing costs, which grows at 11% per annum. What would be your top 3 spending priorities? Thabi, please tell me what you would spend on if you were Tito.
I'd spend on education, I'd spend on infrastructure, and I'd spend on health.
Is there a dichotomy then to be made between social spending and infrastructure spending, or are they both the same side of one coin?
No, so I chose infrastructure because infrastructure is an investment. And if you look at our expenditure side of the budget, it is predominantly consumption based. And we need to move it away from consumption to investment. But at the same time, I also recognize that we need to allocate money towards education so that we lessen the money that is allocated to social grants, for instance, and also health. Because I think education and health are a priority for this country.
Now, the Keynesian economists say that the only way, and historically they may be right, to get out of a recessionary climate is for the state to muscle in and to spend massively on infrastructure in order to induce a reticent or reluctant private sector to invest in the economy and drive us out of this recessionary climate.
Yeah, but in reality, and that is right, that Keynesian is to spend your way out of a recession or out of a slow growth. But in our case, we don't have money from the government perspective, so government doesn't have money to spend, consumers don't have money to spend, and corporates don't have money to spend. We need to actually save more. What happened in Europe, for instance, just after their financial crisis, they thought they would do the same, that they were going to put money into
ECB cheapening money.
Exactly, cheapening money. They thought that everybody would consume their way out of a recession. But what happened is that government started saving, households started paying back their debt, government paid back their debt, corporates paid back their debt. So instead of actually consuming, the economies didn't grow. They were just paying down on their debt.
Now, Thabi, let's go to the tax and the revenue collection side of the budgeting process. My colleague Krivani Pillay has invented something really novel. It's a technique for asking South Africans what they think about topics that range from economic management to social welfare provision to service delivery as we approach these elections. So she's got these bats. I'm going to ask you a question. If you agree,
yeah,
raise your green bat, yellow for if you're neutral, red if you completely disagree.
Okay.
Turn those bats your way. Now, would you tax those fat cats? Would you introduce a wealth tax? Neutral. Why?
Because I'm not sure whether it will contribute enough to the revenue. I also am aware of the number of people and the composition of people that contribute towards taxes, and I wouldn't want to overtax them, not yet. So I'm still not sure about whether a tax on like the wealthy would really be impactful, given that I expect about 10 billion shortfall in revenues. We have to find that somewhere, but I don't think that a wealth taxes would give us sufficient funds to put money into into paying that 10 billion that I mentioned.
Now, last year, we were all very worked up about an increase to VAT.
Yep.
Would you hike it a little bit slightly despite consumer pressure? Yes.
Yep.
Why?
I actually wished that we would increase it by 2 percentage points instead of 1 percentage point when we did the reviewing of the VAT. And that's because I know that we're in an economic rut and we need to raise money towards the revenue. And currently, personal income tax, the reason why we have this 10 billion shortfall or over 10 billion shortfall, personal income tax has declined. And corporate income tax has declined because of a decline in corporate profitability. So you really have no other option but to raise revenue through VAT. And so
do you
I would
not
have
fear
increased
social
it.
unrest?
You know, I feel that we're not looking at this reform properly because we really need to reform the economy, and it's going to take, I dedicate the next 5 years into correcting the wrongs and the ills of the past. And that includes sacrifices that we have to make. An increase in VAT is an increase that impacts everyone. And on top of that, we can have the targeted VATs targeted taxes that we increase annually. But because those are not enough, I think that an increase in VAT would be sufficient to deal with the shortfall in revenues.
And now for the killjoy tax. We already tax our sins very high. Would you tax the newly legalized marijuana? And please don't laugh. Indeed you would. Why?
In the same way that we tax tobacco and alcohol, I see it in the same category.
Well, that's an interesting approach. Thanks for playing my bat game with me, and now we will take an ad break.